There's just a couple things I want to mention about some things that are inside of your program. We have a list of registrants for you, so that if you'd like to connect with folks, you'll have their names and email addresses. Also, this afternoon, we have an optional tour of Crystal Bridges that's free, the Museum of American Art. So for those of you who would like to participate, we're just going to be carpooling there. Excuse me. And I've got some directions inside of your packet if you need those. So I hope you'll take advantage of it. This is going to be my first trip to the museum, and from folks who've been there, I've heard some really wonderful things about it. Dinner is on your own tonight as well, so hopefully you all can make connections today. We can make plans to have a wonderful evening after a great day of presentations today. I want to take just a minute to recognize folks who are serving on the conference committee with me. I could not have done this without their help, and had some very valuable insight, suggestion, advice, and also their hard work. We put a lot of work into working to make this conference a success. Robbie Allen is our executive secretary, and she is probably right outside the door. She was helping to check everyone in. Kelsey Levine, if you guys would kind of wave to everyone so they would know you. She's from the University of Arkansas. Allison Nicholas from Axiom. Heather Reese from the Department of Human Services. Larry Strickland, there's Larry, from the Department of Human Services. Sandra Thomas from the Department of Health, and also Angela Williams from the University of Arkansas. And thank you all so much. Please give them a round of applause. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Sandra Thomas, who is our AACE president.
Good morning. We're glad that everyone could make it. Hope you had a wonderful drive up to such a beautiful place here in Springdale. I want to recognize the board members, current board members, Kimberly Spicer, our president-elect, Kimberly Bland, our secretary. She was not able to come. Heather Reese, our treasurer. If you could stand. Don Smith, our employer representative, he was unable to attend. Dana Trimble, four-year college representative. Mary Kay Warren, our two-year college representative. And Ricky Booker, historian. Let's give the board a hand. Also at this time, Ricky has an announcement for our members.
Yes, just one quick thing. I'm actually working on our newsletter, our second newsletter for the organization. So if you have any staff members that you would like to highlight, or if you know of anyone that's retiring and you want to highlight them in the newsletter, please let me know.
All right, so let's get started. We hope everyone have a great time, and welcome to AACE.
Good morning, AACE. Welcome, welcome. We're glad you're here. And once again, my name is Allison Nicholas. I'm with AACE Corporation, and I've been asked to help bring Stephen to the, I guess, the podium this morning, and I'm glad to do that. Some of you may not know that Stephen is a friend of AACE long term. In fact, last time he was in Arkansas speaking to AACE, he was right here in the Northwest Arkansas corner. So Stephen, welcome back. We're glad you're here. All of you can read the bio. So I've known Stephen for a long time. In fact, I was the person who recruited him here the first time he came. So I'm so glad to have the opportunity to introduce him to you. You know, like I said, you can read his bio, but the way I would describe Stephen is, and his wife, they are a team of entrepreneurs, and they have been so for a long time. Stephen's been passionate about employment since he was in college, and an entrepreneur since that time, and he spent a lot of time thinking about how he can use technology, how he can use networking skills, and how to help college students find jobs. I mean, that's really what he's passionate about. And if you follow him on LinkedIn and Twitter, I had the opportunity to be a part of a conference that Stephen coordinated last December in Dallas. And he's one to follow, I'll just tell you that. He's someone to follow. He's probably one of the most knowledgeable people I know when it comes to college recruiting and what's happening day to day. He spends his days and weeks and evenings when he's not with his family, his kids, and he's really spending time thinking about how he can do a better job educating us about the future of college recruiting and how to be passionate about our students and help them think about their adult decisions they're making while they're in college and how to think about their future and how things are changing, as we all know every day. So I'm really looking forward to hearing Stephen's words of wisdom here in Arkansas today. And Stephen, thank you for taking your time from your very busy schedule to share with us the things that we know you know. Okay, come on up.
Thank you so much. Way too kind. So yes, I spent time doing that. I also spent time wondering if my dog is getting enough sleep. But as Allison said, Stephen Rothberg. First of all, it's kind of nice coming to these events. Even just a few years ago, there was always the announcement to turn off your pagers. It's been so long since I've known anybody that actually has a pager. So that's a nice thing. So phones on, ringers off if you're over 40. If you're under 40, why would you ever have your ringer on? So I've got my Twitter handle at the bottom. I may have the hashtag. Hopefully that's okay with the folks at AACE. Tweet to your heart's content, and I won't be bothered if I see people doing this because I know 100% of that will be about this presentation. No possibility they're going to be texting with friends, 0. Mobile, so use them. We're going to talk for about 45 minutes or so. I'm going to try to do a sort of a technology and career services university recruiting presentation. And I thought that the way it would make sense is for me to talk about sort of what's been in the past, bring it up to more or less where we are today. And then we're going to have a short break and we're going to have a panel discussion on the future. And we've got 4 people who I think will be able to add some interesting insights from their organizations, things that they've seen at last week's NAMES conference, whatever. That are coming. And clearly some of the things that are coming, some organizations are already doing and doing well, and those very same things will be completely unknown to other organizations. So it'll be a little bit different organization to organization. I'm going to try my best to sort of break up the conversation into the different components. When I look at university relations, I see 3 main stakeholders, the employers, the career services, and the candidates. And hopefully those sort of 3 circles intersect in a place where the experience is good for the candidate, the experience is good for career services, and the experience is good for employers. If anybody can ever find an example like that, please let me know because I have been searching for one. So who am I? If you detect a little bit of an accent, it's not from the barbecue place that I went to last night. I grew up in Winnipeg, which is in Canada. If anybody knows where North Dakota is, keep driving north for about 4 hours. It's one of those places that we like to say that the summers are really nice, and then the 50 weeks of winter are just not quite as good. The snow tends to melt by about August 15th. So I moved to Minneapolis in '88. Favorite joke is that I'm the only person who lives in the Twin Cities who moved there for the weather. I went to the University of Minnesota. I graduated from law school. I am fully recovered, although Allison at times may probably disagree with that. She sees me on Facebook and some of the outrageous things that I'll post. I am a person who will sometimes throw a hand grenade into a room to see what happens. It's a character defect, so bear with me. We went online, College Recruiter, way back in 1996. So in 1996, I think it was 2 years after Netscape went live, or went public. 1994 was kind of when people first started to hear about this thing called the internet. My wife was working for what was then Norwest Bank, which was kind of the guppy that swallowed the whale of Wells Fargo and then renamed itself as Wells Fargo. And at that time, in 1994, a Fortune 500 company, they had email, but only internally. They could not email externally with vendors, partners, contractors, whatever. That was really normal. When we went live in '96, of the Fortune 500, 50 had websites. And of the 50, 5 had sections or a page on their site that had employment information. And of the 5, none had applicant tracking systems. So it was almost all, like if Walmart had a page like that, it would basically say, we're hiring. Here's a fax number if you want to apply in a store. And here's another fax number if you want to apply at our headquarters. And these are the kinds of positions that we hire for. That would have been very typical. The first real applicant tracking system came around in that time. There were definitely things on bulletin boards for those of us who are old enough to remember them, but it was a very different era. Allison mentioned my wife, Faith. I'm like every other male in the world that's married. I'm married up. She sort of came into the business full time about 4 years ago, and she's our CEO. So I get to do more stuff like this, that I enjoy business development, and I do less of managing people, which I'm really horrible at. So by the numbers, 30,000. We have about 30,000 pages of employment-related content, articles, blogs, videos, that kind of stuff, to give you some idea of what College Recruiter does. We have about 300,000 job postings live on our site at any given time, internships, entry-level jobs, that type of stuff, and about 2 million recent grads and students use our site a year. So I see a lot of stuff. I see a lot of crap that crosses my desk. I see a lot of stuff that we do poorly, that we do well, that Career Services does poorly, that Career Services does well, etc. It's amazing to me, some of the issues that we're all having are some of the same issues that we were having in '96, and that we're still having them today. It's amazing to me how some of the issues that we all experienced in '96 just simply don't exist anymore. I mean, there have been some phenomenal improvements, and there have been some areas that's like, why can we not fix this? There are also areas that are worse. In '96, I rarely heard recruiters saying, I'm getting too many people applying to my jobs. I'm looking for quality. In '96, it was far more common to say, how do we get more people applying? And that's something that's really changed. So, Career Services folks, who remembers these? Yeah, big fan? Big fan? Really good? Yeah. I still see this in some career service offices. I was at the AACE Conference last week, and I was talking to a guy who is at a school that I think he said 10 years ago had 5,000 students. Today is 15,000 students. He is the only paid member of the career services staff. One guy, 15,000 students. This is what he has. So he is too busy and has no money to bring in a NACE-Link, a CSO research, or any of the other systems. So when his 15,000 students want to get help finding a job, that's what he sees. That's where he points them. Who remembers these? This was the original job board. I was talking to my 16-year-old daughter. We have a 20, 18, and 16-year-olds. And I was saying to her the other day, do you know where the phrase job board comes from? And she looked at me like, well, that's the kind of business that we have. And it's like, no, this is a job board. And our industry shamelessly ripped that off, because how else do you describe what we do? Online help wanted classifieds website. Nah, job board is easier to remember. This is what I saw when I went to school back in 1867. The photo's a little bit dark, but anybody who's seen 2001: Space Odyssey, which, by the way, we were supposed to be traveling to Jupiter 14 years ago. This is what I think of as sort of the prehistoric era, and why? It's because in that time I was in high school. Anything that happened before then really doesn't matter. I had a 9600 baud US robotics modem, and I was the bomb. I was connected to the internet in like 1986 before anybody knew what the internet was. I was a total, I know this is a shock, total geek about that. I mean, I could send a WordStar file to somebody across town in under an hour. That's amazing. Job tracks. Who remembers Job Track? Yeah, awesome system. At their peak in 2000, About 95% of US college students were at schools that were what they called job track schools. That was basically the job board that powered the Career Service Office website. Monster bought them for about $200 million in November of 2000. And then what I heard is about 2 weeks later, sent out an email to every student in the database saying, sign up for this credit card offer. And that didn't go over real well with the Career Service Office. They thought until that time the data was theirs. They checked their contracts, and the contracts basically said, we can do anything we want. We are required to cash your checks, and that's about it. So a consortium came together. Career Services said, forget this. I almost did probably language there. We're going to go create our own system. And these folks from Monster can take a hike. Several hundred schools got together with NACE, with Direct Employers Association, and created a competitive job track that later became known as NACELink. NACELink ran for 3-4 years, ran into some significant technical issues like any website does. You need to grow, you need to improve, you need to evolve. And they brought in Simplicity to do that. And Simplicity since that time, so for roughly a decade, has basically been the organization running NACELink. They just acquired Experience out of bankruptcy, so for the career service offices that are using Experience, welcome to the NACELink family. I've heard different things about what that's going to mean. I don't know if it's really shaken out, whether you're going to have your own platform. I've heard that you're probably all going to be migrated over to NACELink, and that you can opt out of that, but I don't know why you would. It's a perfectly good platform for career services. Around that same time, so early 90s, anybody remember OCC, Online Career Center? That basically became Monster. And then there was this thing called the Monster Board. It started to do a bunch of different acquisitions. They rebranded as Monster. Career Builder started at that time actually as an ATS. Headhunter.net acquired Career Builder, took the Career Builder name. This was all completely off the radar to the vast majority of employers at the time. They weren't using the internet. This is, again, 2 years before Netscape went public, 2 years before the internet became a public name or public. If you were online at that time, there's a really good chance that the way you connected was right? And that was the era where your mailbox would be stuffed full of discs from AOL. Very different era. If you had broadband access, almost certainly it was at work, not at home. To have broadband at home at that time, very, very unusual. And Google went live in '98. So we went live in '96, they went live 2 years later. At this time, 98, 99, 2000, most people thought of Google as a joke. It's like, okay, great, you can search for websites, but there's no directory. How do I figure out what I want if I can't go click, 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 click? Got keywords? What's a keyword? I don't understand how to use this. They had no revenue for a couple of years until they figured out that they could put contextual ads above and to the right. People, it's like, how can you possibly make money on search? Who's going to pay for that? Well, pretty clearly they figured some stuff out. Middle Ages. I was tempted to put a photo up here from the Monty Python, the Search for the Holy Grail. And then I thought, no, I'm going to start to get into some language issues, like I soiled my armor, stuff like that. And so I decided to stay safe with the Neil Armstrong photo. So 2000, Monster acquires Job Track, rebrands it as Monster Track. That became Monster Campus. That became nothing. Career Builder now has what they call Career Rookie, which is kind of what Monster ended up doing, which is kind of a skin on it. It's the same database, it's the same back end, everything's the same except for the front. It's got sort of a student-facing section and they do some filtering so that when students go to that site, they can see just the jobs that are appropriate for them. Flipdog. Anybody remember that? Didn't think so. Oh, one, Allison, duh. So, two extreme nerds in the audience. One's up here, one's back there. Sorry. Flipdog was a really cool site. This was the beginning of everybody, if anybody's heard of scraping or wrapping, this was the first site that did it really well. So when Indeed comes to your websites for the employers in the room and grabs with and runs them on their site alongside your jobs so that your competitors come to their site to see your jobs, but then click on your competitor's job and they go over to your competitor's website, or they do really, really well, call you up and say, you know, you've got 178 jobs running on our site, and last month we sent you 1,232 candidates. It would be a shame to have that turned off. Do you want to pay us for that traffic? So it's not just the folks at Indeed. There are a ton of aggregators, and I'll talk about them a little bit more later. But Flipdog was the first one that did this well. This was a real threat to traditional job boards. Traditional job boards were charging $300 posting. Flipdog was putting the postings up for free, and there was a massive amount of traffic to Flipdog because all of the jobs were all in one place. So very, very good for candidates. So what happened? Monster acquired them and shut them down. Now, if Monster had been smart, Monster would have become Indeed. Monster would have said, this is the future, and we are going to throw away our old business model of $300 per post, and we're going to go to Flipdog, and we're going to be like Google, and we're going to somehow figure out the revenue. We're going to charge per click. But Flipdog went away. But it didn't go away quickly enough because there were a whole lot of job boards out there that saw the more jobs, the better. And that's an underlying issue that still impacts us today, for better or for worse. So right around that time, things started to really heat up. Nacelink took over, Simplicity took over for Nacelink. The first true aggregator in the job board model, where they scraped every job they could and charged you per click, was not Indeed, despite what they say. It was Top USA Jobs. And I know the owner of Top USA Jobs, and he will absolutely tell you that they were first. Skype went live in 2003. Any employers or career service offices using Skype? Probably all of you, right? That hasn't actually been around for that long. That's only 12 years, and nobody really heard about it for the first few years. Skype became really popular, and then Microsoft bought them, and everybody thought, oh, Microsoft is going to do to Skype what Monster did to JobTrack, or what Monster did to Flipdog, and they're going to shut them down, or they're not going to invest properly. And I think really the opposite has been true. I think Microsoft has done a nice job with Skype. It's free. There are enhancements. You can now do video calls with multiple people. The quality's better. You're not getting dropped calls anymore. You don't have to use a Microsoft email address. There was some rumors early on, and in order to use Skype, you have to get an MSN account. You don't. So all that's nice. LinkedIn launched in 2003. They had no clue on revenue. They just had this vision of helping job seekers and other people kind of connect for career reasons. It truly was a social media site back in 2003. It really primarily helped people connect with each other. Now, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later, I don't see LinkedIn as social at all. It's much more of a job board, I think, than it is a social media site. Year later, Facebook. Year after that, YouTube. This was the era, the Middle Ages, where if you were going to be an employer and try to reach candidates, you had kind of 3 or 4 choices. You could post a job to a site like ours, to a Nacelink, to an Experience. College Central is another one that was and remains very popular. So job postings. Basically, Benjamin Franklin invented that when he created a newspaper and they had classified ads in it. So very, very old-fashioned, archaic, text-only system. They're efficient. Doesn't take much time to post them. Doesn't take much time to respond to them. They're effective. despite what third-party recruiters would have you believe, job boards, job postings are one of the best ways for employers to hire people, especially the candidates that we're talking about towards the beginning of their careers. And banner ads. Banner ads became really popular, I think, when Yahoo figured out how to do that well. But as YouTube became popular, and as more and more people got better broadband, we had these things called graphics. It didn't need to just be plain text anymore. You could actually load a web page in under a minute. And so you started to get HTML ads. You started to get ads that included graphics, photos of the happy employees. Amazing how many of these emails I've seen that the same group of 3 very nice looking, young, diverse people have gone from one company to another company to another company to another company, and they're wearing the same clothes. It's amazing. And it's always like the older guy leaning over the computer. What's that? And the young woman is like, this is a computer. So we started to see more HTML ads, not just plain text. We started to see things like job postings that, gosh, had a company logo in them. If you can call that branding, then I guess we can call that branding. A lot of job boards now will integrate video. So if you have a recruitment video on YouTube or on your website, there's a pretty good chance that your job board partner will include that video. Sometimes there's a charge, sometimes they're not. I would strongly encourage you, whether or not there's a charge, to include that video. If you've heard the expression that a picture is worth 1,000 words, I think that a video is worth 1,000 pictures. On our site, we have tens of thousands of postings that have video in them, and they greatly outperform the postings without video. And it kind of makes sense. Akamai is a very high quality employer. They've got great jobs, they pay well, they're very attractive to the candidates. But if their posting was just text, yawn. Nothing to do with the job, nothing to do with Akamai, nothing to do with the candidate, but it's the same as every other posting out there, and you can only communicate so much in text. Like an email that I sent yesterday to one of our employees who didn't understand my tone. And she was right and I was wrong. I wasn't careful enough to put the smiley face in or whatever. So she thought I was angry at her, and actually I was super happy with her. And the text didn't communicate the tone. You put a photo in with somebody chuckling or laughing or a little smiley face, that helps. You put a 2-minute video in, that's awesome. We had an employer in Arkansas that kind of a struggle for them to recruit people from outside of the area to work here. And the same thing happens for us in Minnesota, right? They say that in Minnesota, it's really, really hard to get people to move to Minnesota, even harder to get them to move away. And I've heard the same sort of thing here. If you're going after a candidate who's lived their entire life in Manhattan, that's a pretty uphill battle, right? But let's say that that candidate really likes the outdoors. Probably a text ad about the job and your requirements, maybe salary, it ain't gonna do it. But if you show a video about what their life would be, their coworkers, and you emphasize the outdoors or whatever might be attractive to that candidate, that video is gonna speak volumes, much better than a straight text ad. So include video. So today, get the reference? Get the reference? One, viewer. So today I want to talk about the 7 things that I sort of see that are happening that are impacting the uses of technology amongst this audience. So first of all, social media. Yawn. This was supposed to be the silver bullet. Everything that's new is supposed to be the silver bullet. Oh, Facebook. I can post a job on Facebook, and I am going to be overwhelmed by only the highest quality candidates. I'm going to have my pick. I'm not going to have to spend money on job boards anymore. I'm not going to have to have recruiters. All I have to do is come in, check my email for 5 minutes, hop over to Facebook, post a photo of a cat doing something cute, and hire everybody that I need to. Okay. Really? Yes, you can post your cat video. Really hard to hire somebody on Facebook. Great engagement tool. Great way to make your organization known to interact with your students, if you're career services, to interact with candidates. I have yet to hear of an employer who has hired someone who went sort of from beginning to end on Facebook. Is it an influencer? Can it help? Absolutely. Same thing on Twitter. When people say, oh, you know, I hire people off of Twitter all the time. Really? You might make somebody aware of the position, and then they click on the link, and then they go to your site or somewhere else, and then you still have to have a good, robust career site. And then you still have to have recruiters who can talk their way out of a wet paper bag and interview and properly select. So was Twitter a component of that? Absolutely. But as an industry, and I suspect almost all industries are like this, we tend to look for the silver bullet. And the best way I've heard it described is it is one, social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. It's one arrow in your quiver. You go into battle and you're an archman and you have one arrow, you're gonna die pretty quickly. You have a quiver full of arrows. Now you've got a chance. So use Facebook, use Twitter. We do. They are some of the most cost-effective ways of driving people to our site. They are great to be able to allow people to engage with you. Some candidates, whether you're a career services or employer, some candidates will prefer to interact with you over Twitter. They will prefer to interact with you over Facebook. Great. Engage. Then move them over. At the end of the day, they got to go through their ATS. And I feel bad for them when they have to, but they have to. LinkedIn. Good. That was worth the 15 minutes on Google. So LinkedIn, I'm a huge fan. We had a great partnership with them for a couple of years. We're not going to speak negatively about them, but like every other arrow, they are one arrow. They are not a social media site, despite for the employers in the room, what your salesperson is going to tell you, they are not. If you really want to put your be passive aggressive with your LinkedIn salesperson, ask them to review the filing that they made before they went public about how they described themselves. They did not describe themselves as being a social media site. They described themselves as being a job board. Their words. So when a salesperson calls you up and talks social, pull up the SEC filing and ask them, why are you talking to the SEC as a job board, but you're talking to me as social media? It's fun. It doesn't get you anywhere. But for passive aggressive people like me, it gives you jobs. And my wife is watching, she's like, oh God, really? I knew that. Everybody who knows you knows that. Did you really have to tell everybody else that? So LinkedIn is a job board. At the end of the day, I define a job board versus a social media site is the primary way of them generating revenue, generating traffic. Is it job postings? Is it employment-related ads? Or is it interactions between people? What are people going there for? And as much as we would like to believe that people are going to LinkedIn to further their career and to learn about how to better manage people and how to show up at work on time and how to wear a nice tie that doesn't have too many stains on it like mine probably would. Cool. LinkedIn, people are going there usually when they're looking for a job or when they're looking to hire somebody. It's a really, really great job board. It's really great. They've executed brilliantly on the stuff that they have done. And they are, for better or worse, kind of like the crack dealer down the street. Right? They will give you a little bit of crack and get you hooked. And then when you want a little bit more, you have to go up to a higher package. Yeah, right? And then you have to go up to a higher package and up to a higher package. And before you know it, you've got a recruiter license, AKA crystal meth. So this incredibly blurry visual. I apologize. I had another one that just was kind of like meaningless. But what you can, and so I replaced this morning. This is the best image I could get early on. Quickly, virtual career fairs, career service folks in the room. Anybody not doing virtual career fairs? through the Career Service Office, whether you're hosting them or employers, you're not, you're definitely the minority. And I've heard some real controversy amongst career services. Budget is one issue, right? Some of the vendors want you to buy a big expensive package or a very stripped down package, crack, crystal meth. Or the employers will come in and you've got significant security concerns. You know, is the data that our students are entering into these systems, is it secure? Is it not? Would it be easier for us to use Skype? Every student has a laptop or an iPad with a camera. Why do we need to be providing that equipment anymore in our offices? Why do we spend a bunch of money when they'd rather do it in their dorm rooms anyway? Those are some of the issues I've heard with virtual career fairs. On the other hand, if you have a campus and you're not a Stanford, you're not an MIT, where employers are pounding down your door to try to hire your students, you've got disabled students, who doesn't? You've got students who grew up someplace else, they're going to school here, they want to move back home. You've got students who grew up here and their girlfriend is across the country and they want to move out there. Virtual career fairs are a phenomenal way. And there are some really, really great vendors that you can work with. Most of them, their business model is having folks like Allison pay the fee. And then career services and students who do use them for free. There definitely are some virtual career fairs where the Career Service Office pays. And interestingly, I wouldn't be surprised to see that model living out. Because if a Career Service Office hosts a virtual career fair, perhaps in partnership with other schools in the area, then you can charge the employers a fee. So as on-campus career fairs kind of go away, these, I think, can be a great way for you to generate revenue. And if you've got, I'm sorry for the employers in the room who aren't going to want to hear this, but if you've got students that they want, they're willing to pay for that. I don't care how much you charge for a virtual career fair. If you've got good students, our friends at Walmart are going to pay for that. It's a heck of a lot cheaper for them to hire somebody through a virtual career fair than fly across the country and interview 12 people and then have to fly those people back. You can do really, really great things with virtual career fairs. Some of them are just text only. And you can talk to sort of one person at a time. The newer ones allow you to kind of have almost like think of like a career fair where you're at a table and you've got 12 students standing around. You have a conversation with one and the other 11 benefit from that at the same time. It's like a group chat. You finish talking to her, and then he asks a question, and they all benefit. That you can do sort of a group chat. But when she starts to talk to you about the fact that she has DWIs on her record, and she arrested for domestic assault last year, and it worked for you, right? That's probably where you want to go into a private chat room. And that's where you just do one-on-one chat. I was at a conference a couple years ago, and I was talking like DWI, enterprise renter cars probably. They can use a webcam, and they can look at that recruiter face to face. I think this is phenomenal. If you're an employer and you're trying to reach students at a campus that you might not have resources to go to, you would love to go to that school, they've got great students, you just simply at the end of the day, you've got 20 schools you can go to, it's in rural, and you can't afford to take 2 days to fly out there, get there by dog sled, interview a few people, wear your mukluks. For those of us from Canada, you know what that is. And so this way you can connect with that person and have a face-to-face. And if she's really great, maybe you fly her out. If she's going to be working remotely, as more and more of us do you really need to even fly her out? You know, if this is how she's going to be interacting with you day after day after day when she's on the job, this might be fun. And you also get to see her firm. Aggregators. Indeed, Jobs to Careers, Simply Hired, ZipRecruiter. A lot of companies like that, job boards will aggregate. And what that means, there are different definitions, but it usually means that they are grabbing jobs with or without permission from a wide variety of sources. So the individual can go to that site, manually post a job, almost always, but usually an aggregator is going to grab jobs from other jobs. They're going to grab jobs off this website, they're going to grab jobs from every place they can find it. And then usually the business model is they'll go to the employer and they'll say, your job is on page 17, your competitor's job is on page 1. They're getting 172 qualified people a day, you're getting 3. Wouldn't you like to be like them? Do you want to be left behind? I mean, the message is kind of, you probably get 1 or 2 of those calls a month, right? Second, 1 or 2, or an hour. They can provide tremendous value. I'll talk a little bit more about how their business model is quite different, but for a candidate to find all of the relevant jobs to them all in one place is really neat. Now, one of the things that's starting to emerge are niche aggregators. So you'll have a healthcare website that will aggregate jobs from all different kinds of healthcare companies, with or without permission. You'll have, and we do some of this, you'll have a college site aggregating entry-level jobs and internships. So we get jobs from other job boards. Candidate reads the job on our site, hits apply, our site to apply. We don't send them to another job board. You've got sites that will for military hires, sales, and just about any kind of niche you can think of, there are niche aggregators coming. Because they all want a piece of the billion-dollar pie that Indeed is creating. For candidates, it's good news and bad news. I think on balance it's good. They get access to a huge number of relevant jobs. The bad news is they also get access to a huge number of irrelevant jobs. And sorting those out, what's good, what's bad, is a problem. If you've got a junior in a chemical engineering program, and she goes to Indeed, I guarantee you that almost every job that she sees there, she is not going to be qualified for. If she goes to a chemical engineering aggregator, almost every job she sees there, she will also be unqualified for because she doesn't have the years of experience that she requires. So you can give me an example of just about any kind of aggregator for our audience, people who are at the beginning of their careers. They're either going to see jobs that are outside their industry, outside their geographic area, or outside their years of experience. And I think one thing we have to do better is hand jobs to.
So percentage of whether those companies are even really seeing our candidates they're applying or not. If they're doing that bait and switch basically to the business of, hey, well, your competitor's job is there. Are students even really being considered as candidates?
Yeah, so the question is, you know, if an aggregator, whether it's an Indeed or any other aggregator, goes up and grabs your jobs, runs them on their site, and a student searches, sees the job, will you as an employer even know it? Mm-hmm. You know, it depends. The ethical ones, which I've listed, LinkedIn, Indeed, Simply Hired, Jobs to Careers, those websites will apply. Okay. So you might not know that candidate came from Indeed. You might not know that candidate first saw your posting on LinkedIn, clicked the apply button, went over to Jobs to Careers, clicked the apply button, went over to Beyond, clicked the apply button, went over to some other site, clicked the apply button, and then got to your ATS. That happens too. Click, 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 click. Terrible for the candidate experience. It should be source traffic. So applicant tracking systems, every major applicant tracking system now, 100% of them allow you to do source tracking, where you can get like a code, provide that to your job board partner, and then you can track in a fully automated way where that candidate came from, if it's kind of the last click before they apply. It's definitely not foolproof, but it's a heck of a lot better than asking a candidate 2 weeks later, how did you find us? And the reality is they applied for 200 jobs a day in the previous 2 weeks. They're going to make up something. And then you're going to fill in a box, and you're going to say, oh, it's data. And data is always correct. And so I'm going to rely on that data to make decisions in the future, which is just, you know, you're better off putting a blindfold on, spinning yourself around, throwing a dart, and maybe hitting your boss in the butt. So the aggregators, if you are an Indeed client, for example, you can provide them a code, and when that candidate sees your posting on Indeed and hits their apply button and goes over to your site to apply, you'll know they came from Indeed. There are some websites out there that will scrape your jobs. When the candidate hits the apply button, the candidate has to register with that website, and then that website will send that candidate to you. So they're using your content to increase their registration numbers. Internships.com does that. So they will scrape your jobs with or without your permission, and kind of, let's call it the price you pay for that free traffic, or if you're paying for that traffic, is that you are helping to increase their registration numbers. Maybe that's totally acceptable to you, maybe it's not. It's just something to be aware of. But the sites like Indeed, Simply Hire, Jobs to Careers, those sort of more mainstream sites, the candidates are not required to register. I think that's a better business model. I think no matter what the site is, that student doesn't want to register with you. They shouldn't, right? I mean, we're in the business of connecting candidates with employers. The more place in prevention, that's a bad thing. We'll talk more about recruiter experience too. Rapidly. And I think if we were to talk again in 2 years, this is going to be the norm. SAP is a freak of nature, and I say that in the most complimentary sense when it comes to mobile. If you're looking at your mobile site, career service, employer, job board, whatever, and you want to see an incredibly friendly mobile experience, there are very, very few examples. This is one of them. There is no field here for a candidate to upload a resume. If you're on your smartphone, what is the chance that you have a PDF or a Word document saved on your smartphone? Most people don't even know they can do it. If they know they can do it, they don't know how to do it. If they know how to do it, they can't be bothered to do it. So your ATS and some job boards and whatever will say, oh, we've solved that, because when you go to our website, we've got a apply with LinkedIn button there. Okay, well, that's great if you have a LinkedIn profile and if that profile is up to date. Now, LinkedIn has done a phenomenal job over the last 4 or 5 years of sort of penetrating the college audience, and there's a very large percentage of college students that have registered with LinkedIn. But if they registered in their freshman year and they've never been back since, are they going to apply to your job using their LinkedIn profile? No freaking way. Are they going to apply using Facebook? Oh yeah, sure. You're going to get their data, and Facebook isn't going to send you photos of them half naked or anything like that. But the candidate doesn't know that. They're thinking, I don't want, XYZ Corporation having anything to do with my illicit photos on Facebook. And the SAP, it's got just a handful of fields and it's stuff you can check. You can fill this in just a couple of minutes on your phone. And really, as an employer, do you really need to know at the beginning where that person has been every minute of their life for the last 10 years? Or do you really need to know where they live, what school they go to, what's their major, GPA, maybe some very, very basic information. And then if they look good, very summary 5-second glance, you email them and you ask them for their resume. Or you then say, hey, now here's a link, complete the process on the ATS. The candidate then knows it's worth their time. And you've got that candidate in your database, in your talent community, as some of the providers call it, which isn't about talent, and it's not about community, but that's another story for the day. But you can then interact with them. You can send them a monthly newsletter. This is what's happening. You can engage. A lot of people, especially students, will be interested in your brand far more than that job. I want to work for this company at some point. So let them express interest. Stay in touch with them. 3 months later, they'll apply. We're all ADHD at the age of 20, right? I mean, it's just, you're sitting down, you're applying for jobs. It's like, oh, there's a bird. We have to deal with that. Matching technology. This has a huge amount of promise, and just like in the movie 2001, I think when we get to Jupiter, this stuff might work. Matching technology is being sold to employers as the silver bullet, and it is not the silver bullet any more than Facebook. Quite frankly, it doesn't work. There is no job board or any other organization out there that can truthfully say that even a slight majority of the time, matching works. And here's the problem. I had a discussion yesterday or the day before with a career service person at one of the HBCUs. And they are interested in building kind of their own job board, not using a NACE link or a CSO research or whatever. They want to build their own site. eHarmony, for those of you who have used it, it didn't exist when my wife and I got married, thankfully. But thankfully, because I found the right match, I didn't do that. Didn't need to spend a couple $100 in eHarmony. eHarmony has spent a couple of $100 million in the last 2 years trying to build a matching site. Their rollout is 1.5 years later than they originally said it was going to be. When it launches, it might be really, really good technology. And in theory, you're going to have candidates being matched to the best employment opportunities in the world. But here's the problem that I asked the guy from eHarmony at a conference a year ago that he wasn't really able to answer. If I say, okay, I want to go and work for Axiom, and this job I can see that I would report to Allison, and I think Allison and I would get along great, she'd be a phenomenal boss. And I go to work there, and for the first 6 months, everything is awesome, and then Allison transfers to a different department. And now my new boss's first name is Attila, and his last name is the Hunt. Am I matched well? Did eHarmony do his job? Yeah. But unlike your boss, you're rarely married to them. I am, but very few people are married to their bosses. So matching isn't just about the company, isn't just about the company culture, it's about who you're working with, and specifically who you're working for. I don't see how eHarmony can handle that. I don't JobBox, which is now the business, can handle that. Monster has, I think it's called semantic search or something like that. They're all trying to create technology to deal with a problem that I don't think can be dealt with because you have to look into a crystal ball and you don't know what's going to happen in the future. Another problem with it is it requires candidates to spend an incredible amount of time. Most of them are 30 to 45 minutes, basically going through an online profile. What do you like? What don't you like? What's your work like? What's your interest? Blah, 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 blah. You have to build this really great profile. Now, if you're really, really interested in that job, fine, you might be willing to do that, but when you're registering at a job board, you're not really applying to a job, you're registering with a job board, and there are 100,000 job boards out there. So why would you spend 45 minutes with one job board when you can do it at Indeed in 2 seconds? So that's a bit of a disconnect. You lose a huge percentage of candidates because the time commitment is too great. And then on the recruiter side, what recruiter in the room that has 1,000 jobs has enough time to have recruiters spend 45 minutes a job filling in these profiles just on one site? You know, if you're hiring a CFO, absolutely, well worth the time. You're hiring 14 web development interns and you need them to start 2 months from now? No freaking way. You're just not going to do it. So you've kind of got 3 circles. You've got the technology has to work. The candidate has to be willing to spend a significant amount of time, and the recruiter has to be willing to spend a significant amount of time, and all 3 of those need to intersect. So I think that there's a small number of jobs that this is going to be awesome for. but I have a hard time believing that this is going to be something that's going to work well ever. There is some matching that does work well. So we, along with a lot of other sites over the last few years, have gone from the old job match alert system to a new system that uses artificial intelligence, to use another phrase that's overused. What we do, and a lot of other job boards do too, is that when that candidate registers for a sales position in San Francisco, the first job alert that they get that next day has a whole lot of sales positions in San Francisco. Even we're smart to know that. But it'll also sprinkle in some other jobs. Retail sales associate, is that a sales position? Yeah, probably. Customer service, you're getting a little further away. Car wash attendant, definitely not a sales position. We'll sprinkle in a few jobs like that, and those are in San Francisco. And then we'll sprinkle in some sales positions that are in Los Angeles, and Sacramento, and Denver, and Miami. Do we really know that that candidate is only going to consider a sales position in San Francisco? Or is their primary interest a sales position? Or is their primary interest in San Francisco? Or did they just throw some shit in there because they were busy? Sorry. Remember this gas. What's one of the other S words? So that's an issue that I think that most of the job boards are overcoming. Talk to your ATS provider for the employers in the room. Talk to the NACE links, the CSO researchers in the room, and ask them about that. Do the students get exactly the same alert day after day after day, regardless of what jobs they click on? If they are continually clicking on jobs that they didn't sign up for, you know, it's one job kind of got in there as an oddball and they clicked on that, does your system know it? Are you doing anything about it? This stuff is really now kind of becoming mainstream. I think this matching has a lot more promise than the eHarmony type system where the whole, because the candidate doesn't have to spend any time doing this. The recruiter doesn't have to spend any time. We look at behavior. What job are they clicking on? And if they keep clicking on sales jobs all over the country, then we only send them sales jobs, but we send them all over the country, and we kind of forget about San Francisco. Or it'll be tilted towards San Francisco, but they'll get the Miami, the New York, they use the sales positions. If they're only clicking on San Francisco jobs, then we're going to start to send them more and more the car wash jobs and customer service and whatever in San Francisco. So that, I think, is a very candidate-friendly thing. Now, pay for performance. When I was talking about Indeed and the other aggregators, this is how they make their money. They only get paid if they perform. It's kind of what it boils down to. The most common way that we, in this industry, know of pay for performance is pay per click. Candidate sees your job on Indeed. They click on it, not to read the job on Indeed, but they click to go to your website. They can be the best candidate in the world. They can be the worst candidate in the world. You're going to pay your 25 cents or 50 cents or $1 or whatever. So it's up to Indeed to, if they want to make money, they've got to get people clicking on your ad. And one way that they do that is by being smart about the ads they show people. If they look at your behavior and the candidates who are seeing those sales jobs in San Francisco and those are the jobs they click on, they're going to show those sorts of jobs to that candidate. They want candidates who are going to always click off. And then you and the other 17 employers that candidate clicked on their jobs that day, you'll each pay your 50 cents. Now, those job postings almost always pay the job board far less money than if they sold that posting to you for $300. Not at all uncommon. If we've got an employer who's doing a pay per click deal for us, at the end of the month, they might pay us $5. Where if we sold it to them, they might pay us $95. So some people will be like, well, why would you take $5 from the employer rather than $95 from the employer? Well, the reason is if that employer has 1,000 jobs, very unlikely that they're going to pay us $95 for all 1,000 jobs. But if we do it on a pay-per-click deal, very likely that they'll say, take all of our jobs and we'll pay you 25 cents a click. So we make more money from the employer if they pay for performance than if we try to sell them individual postings. I think that's a good model. I think that's good for everybody because it more closely aligns our interests. Something that's starting to emerge, some of the big ad agencies, finally, Bayer, TNP, are working with a company called ClickCast, sister company AppCast. And employers can post and only pay if candidates apply to your jobs. So that gets us even more closely aligned. If we show your jobs and we send you a whole bunch of people who never apply, how does that help you? If they apply to your jobs, that's a little closer, so then we get $1, $5, or $10, depending upon the job. Then there are some job boards, and we have one client that does this, where we get paid per hire. And that's kind of an executive recruiter model. We do that with one employer and one employer only because we've been working with them for a decade, and we completely trust their technical systems and we completely trust their people. And it's the same people who have been there for 10 years. So just like matching you up with a boss, I wouldn't want to do that with an employer where their college relations manager is like on a merry-go-round. And it's like every month there's a new person. Because we might trust the employer, the organization, we might trust their technical systems, but we won't trust somebody that we don't know. I know the person who's there now, and she's very trustworthy, but the person who replaces her could be a total scoundrel. So we really have to have faith in those people. Pay for performance, I think, is going to grow and grow and grow. So for the career service offices that are using systems where you're getting paid a flat rate per posting, or Namelink or whoever is spiffing you every time somebody posts to your school, get ready. Because rather than getting your $5 or $25 or whatever per posting, you're going to start to see 10 cents, 15 cents. For the employers that are not doing pay for performance, get ready for fraud. Because some of these sites are doing absolutely no filtering for what's called bot traffic, automated traffic. So some search engine or spider in China will go to a job board like ours and crawl through the whole site, click on every link. They're copying our content, they're seeing what we link to, whatever. And when that automated system hits your apply button on our site, that looks like an apply click if we're not filtering out that bot. And some of the aggregators, pardon me, some of the aggregators are like, I don't want to know about bots because I can make more money. It's a click. As far as I know, it's a real click. I'm going to send that click over to XYZ company, and they're going to pay 50 cents. And as long as they don't complain, what's the problem? Well, the problem is that that job board, I think, is essentially complicit with that bot, with that scammer or whatever it is. Some of the bots are very legitimate. We get scraped every single day by Google. That's a good thing. But you shouldn't be paying for Google coming to yours, posting on our site, and clicking our apply button to see where it goes. That's hard. It's hard to filter that out, isn't it?
You're speaking about the tracking softwares and things like that. I think one of the big things for career centers is we're trying to find those placements from where our students go.
Yeah.
And when they're using all these different sites rather than Simplicity or whatever, is there a way from our side to have one of those tracking softwares, or how does that work for us to be able to see where our students are going?
Yeah, so if you post a job to, if an employer you're working with posts a job to your Namelink powered site, you know, realistically, the wizard behind the curtain is Simplicity. Same thing applies for CSO research and all of the other providers. And quite frankly, I don't know of any of them that are bad. If I did, I would tell you. I think they all have their strengths and weaknesses. Namelink is kind of probably the best known, so we'll use them as an example. If that student sees the employer's job on Indeed, or on College Recruiter, or on Career Builder, or on, you know, health jobs in southwestern Arkansas for females who are pregnant.com, then you're probably not going to have reliable information, because the best that most career service offices can do is survey their students. A survey of your students is one of those put a blindfold on, spin them around, throw a dart, and maybe they'll hit their boss's butt. It's called convenience sampling. When you do a survey and you ask people to respond if it's convenient to them, which is really what you're doing, then you get polarized results. You get the students who are really, really happy. Oh, Jennifer, thank you so much for helping me find a job. It's the best thing it's what I dreamed of. I can't possibly thank you enough. I want to say thank you to you in part by responding. So like, I'm flying Delta later today. Delta will send me a survey tomorrow. How do we do? And if they did really well, I'm going to take 5 minutes out of my day and I'm going to click that link and I'm going to answer the survey and I'm going to thank them very much for having good for dessert. Then there's the other group. You're horrible. And I want to let you know because I'm passive aggressive. And so I'm going to tell you that you're the worst thing in the world, you're Attila the Hun, blah, blah, blah. But that great majority does not respond because it's not convenient to them. So that data is really, really unreliable, and I urge you not to use it. It's better not to use convenient sampling data than to use it. It's kind of like a focus group. If anybody's been in a focus group, you have 8 people around a table and you've got a person asking questions. I have kind of a dominant personality in those rooms, and I'll do things deliberately to see if I can skew the conversation. And I know it's really stupid, but it's juvenile, but I'm a male, so I'm allowed to be that way. So when you start to ask a small number of people who are not representative of the whole group what their opinions are, and then you extrapolate from that, you say, oh, well, okay, this group said this, and so therefore it's representative of this much larger group. It's not. It's really, really misleading. You have to correct for it, and correcting for it is almost impossible. So if you're going to survey your students, you want to do it randomly. And you want to like pick up the phone and call them and ask them. You don't want to incentivize them. Don't give them entering into a drawing, entering into a raffle, or you'll get a free iTunes download if you respond to that, because then you're only getting answers from people who are money motivated or who want a free tune. You really have to do random sampling. Think political campaigns. Whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, you probably get called, and they want to know who you're going to vote for. It's random, more or less. But there's also an issue now in political campaigns, because are they going to call your cell phone, or are they not going to call your cell phone? They've exempted themselves from those rules. They can call your cell phone, but if they don't know it, and you're enlisted, and you don't have a landline like we don't, how does Mitt Romney's campaign or Barack Obama's campaign call me to ask me who I'm going to vote for? And as soon as they start calling some people, it becomes less random. So
there's not, through those softwares that there's not.
Sorry for going off so far on the tangent. So there's really not a good way for career services to know, did your students find a job and with who? It's a struggle. You can definitely get that information from, say, your NACELink system, but what percentage of your students actually get a job that way?
Sure.
And if NACELink has an ad for XYZ Corporation, and XYZ Corporation is using Taleo, and they didn't provide NACELink with a source tracking code, how can that employer tell NACELink essentially that your student was hired? So there's a reporting problem there too. At the end of the day, I think career services have to rely on students self-identifying. And yeah, I mean, they apply to a job online February 1st and they get an offer March 12th and they accept it April 17th. Are they going to know or care where they found out about it? What if they found it on your website, didn't do anything, talked to their friend who said that their older sister worked there and she really liked it, and then they went directly to that employer's site to find a job and apply? And then they met the recruiter on campus 4 days later and gave that recruiter a resume that the recruiter said that the world will come to an end if I take a paper resume from you. But yet the recruiter goes back to the office, logs into Taleo, and changes the source to career fair because that justifies her going to a career fair at her alma mater. And well, by the way, she got great 50-yard tickets for the homecoming day. What's the source?
Sure.
You're laughing because you know it happens. There's amazing the spike in traffic from employers coming on campus at homecoming, right? So should we take a short break and then we'll get the panel?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.